Andreas, welcome. This is the fourth episode of our podcast, The Fly Report. We are speaking today with Andreas Perotti, the Chief Marketing Officer of EHang. We're so excited to have you here. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Jessica, for the invitation. It's great to be on the show again and talk about our recent progresses and developments. There's going on so much in the eVTOL industry, and we're very proud to be at the forefront of this.
Awesome. So, I thought we'd talk about right now, we hear a lot about EHang. So many people, it's eVTOLs in general are of such high interest around the world. And EHang right now is really the only eVTOL company with vehicles that are currently in service. Could you walk us through the journey that you and the company took to get there and to kind of describe what comes next?
Yeah. Well, as everybody in the aviation community is familiar with, there are a lot of regulations and they're necessary because they provide, on the one hand, a level playing field, and they also do provide safety and security. And that's what it's all about when you transport people from A to B. And I think the big thing in the eVTOL industry is that there is a lot of regulation from the commercial aviation and also from other sectors which influence the UAM industry, which is the automotive industry, which is the public transport community, which is also digital services. And basically, for the regulators, during the process of creating that framework, it was a huge challenge because they need to be based on the standards from the existing experiences, and on the other hand, create a regulation for a totally new market, especially in our case when autonomy comes in on top. So that's a huge challenge where we had a great cooperation as an industry, as EHang, and as companies in general with the aviation regulation bodies. And here we can also see that in our domestic market in China, the authorities take the whole topic very, very serious, and even got further in the last 2 years because the whole topic of the so-called low altitude economy became also a high-level priority for the whole Chinese economy, and we can see that everything is gearing up. However, there are certain regulatory steps defined which you need to fulfill. And in our case, we're the only company which achieved so far the type certification. We also achieved the production certification, meaning our vehicle EH216 has a tick in the box. Our production facilities have a tick in the box. What we need as a next step before we can start fully commercially operating is the so-called operation certificate. But we are far in the progress, and we are very optimistic to receive also that quite soon.
That's awesome. So right now, the deliveries that are being handled, people are you're kind of offloading these, and everyone's obviously optimistic, and just it's sort of a waiting game with you working with the CAC in order to obtain these operational certificates.
That's correct. I mean, we're in the process of building up and enhancing our partnership network, which is already quite strong. Here we have a global approach with different speed in various regions. We can especially see how the Asia Pacific region is developing with China at the forefront, but also other countries like Thailand, Indonesia, Japan. So there's a lot of hunger and progress visible in that region for the whole topic of urban air mobility. But at the same time, we see massive developments and also speed in the Middle East, in Latin America, and also in the US. I mean, even the new president announced he wants to see flying cars in every American city during his period. So that's a big boost for our industry also in the US. But also in Europe, things are moving, even though they could move a bit faster over here. However, for us, it's important that we can create a business already with what we have today, and that's the case. We are selling our products, we're shipping them, we're delivering them, and we are already profitable. When you look at our financial releases, that's a big thing for a future forward market company like us.
Yeah, it's remarkable. I can't believe it. I remember we met at eBase, what, 4 years ago? And
Right.
it's great. And every time I see something come up, I think about the demo. That was the first eVTOL I've ever seen live, was the EH216S on the
Yeah.
floor in Geneva at the Geneva Convention Center. It's amazing, right? Where that, you really saw this, you really see this becoming a reality and taking place. Are there any specific, we just spoke about some of the partnerships that EHang's been maintaining. I know there have been a lot of exciting recent announcements. Is there anything you'd want to mention specifically, anything recent that of interest that and in terms of partnerships and kind of new developments?
Well, there are a lot of them, and we see interest from private companies, likewise as from public regions. And what impresses me very much with the Chinese economy is that the colleagues there have a really clear plan, meaning their vision is to become the leader in the low altitude economy. And you see all the regions contributing to that. There even was a kind of competition established. Who is the first one? Who buys the most vehicles? Who is starting to operate as first player on the market with the biggest amount of EH216s? And that's very exciting because this competition is creating a kind of fear of missing out, which is very positive for us.
Which is
Because you mentioned first time we met 4 years ago at eBase, the times have totally changed for the eVTOL industry. A lot of things happened, but in a positive way. And I would say the hype on the one hand is over, and we're now in not any longer in the valley of disillusionment, thinking about the Gartner hype cycle, but in the phase where we get into realism, and now we see it globally. It's about producing, it's about delivering what you promise, it's about improving the product. Here, I'm also very happy to announce that we have a great cooperation with a fantastic battery company where we also tested solid state batteries. This was also made public already. And we managed to increase the flight time of our EH216 core product almost by the factor of 2, which is massive. And you can almost reach 1 hour of flight
wow.
as of today, which is increasing the use cases dramatically. And it's interesting to see what's next. And I personally think the Middle East is a region to watch very closely, because what we can see is the main players in the different regions globally, in the US, in Europe, in Asia. I mean, the companies are well known. And besides us, nobody has the certificate yet, but all of them are close to get a certificate, but only in the domestic market. Meaning, what happens when you have an FAA certificate, an EASA certificate, or a CAAC certificate like we do? Well, you start the validating process in other markets when you want to scale. And this is what we see in the Middle East. And I think it will be the first region where all of these different certified manufacturers and products are going to be validated in a very, let's say, near timing.
Yeah,
Meaning this will be the first market where we see real competition happening, where we see real operations of different types of vehicles. And that's very exciting to see things happening.
for sure. Very exciting. So, and just, we spoke a lot about partnerships and that being able to fly one of these for almost an hour, right? Double, that's awesome. As for the current, in terms of the current range and what EHang believes it's going to achieve with these new solid state batteries, can you just walk us through some primary and secondary use cases, just basics for the EH216S?
Yeah, one thing is very clear. The whole product was built to improve transport for people and also goods on the long run.
Right,
And integrating this in the highest frequency possible and into everyday lives means it's built for commuting.
right.
And the long-term vision is that everybody has such a product at home, but that vision is very long to take. So the first thing are operator-based models, where you have an operator, they build up a fleet, and then they start selling tickets, like when you have a bus line or a helicopter service or a cab company.
Right.
And so it's not about what is the long-term vision, it's about what is possible today. And we try to not to make things too complicated, but use what we have today. What does this mean specifically? We don't focus on the most complicated use cases, being daily commuting with thousands of vehicles in a mega city environment. That's something we're aiming for, but the first step are touristical use cases, meaning we go to areas where population density is not too high, where you can sell higher ticket prices, and the cost per ticket is not so relevant like it is in the daily commute. And that's the first thing. So touristical use cases in non-urban environments. And here we can also see the biggest interest and the biggest progress. Of course, as a next step, we aim for city commuting. And here we start developing predefined starting and landing spots. We try to connect them with different air routes, which are predefined. And therefore, you can tackle a lot of things which are with let's say with the right understanding, some reservations from the public, when it comes to things like noise pollution, security, and things like this. With the right route planning, you can tackle a lot of these things beforehand, and they're totally not related to the vehicle and to the technology itself. And then we start operating them. That's the next step.
Right. Awesome. So, and now just, right now we're like you said, EHang's very focused on what's being done right now, right? And being realistic. In the future, especially with what you're talking about with with solid state battery investments in production, does EHang have any plans to launch additional vehicles?
Well, absolutely. And these plans are already public. I mean, our current certified flagship product, the EH216, is a multi-copter system. It's the big advantage of being very stable up in the air, and providing a fantastic flight experience. It doesn't need too much of space. So for in-city commuting, it's perfect, especially if you fold up the rotor arms. You don't need a lot of square meters to park it, to store it, to maintain all the logistics around that. As we know, property and square meters in cities are freaking expensive.
Yep.
So we try to be as lean as possible also in that sense. At the same time, we see huge potential in the medium to long haul commuting. This is where you need to get into the fixed wing products. And everybody in the community is familiar with our VT30, which is our fixed wing model. But here we are still in the testing stage, so the product is not publicly released yet. It's not certified yet, but we are working on that. And besides these two means of transport, which are meant for transporting people, of course, the whole cargo sector and the logistics sector is pretty relevant for us. But since we have a platform approach, that goes hand in hand with each other, because everybody who's looking at our product portfolio sees that we are using the same core platform with our multi-rotor system, and then we attach different cabins for different use cases, which is the cabin for two people in the H216, which is a cargo compartment for transporting goods. And which is, for example, a firefighting system to help firefighters, especially in areas which are difficult to reach or which are very high up in the air, like skyscrapers.
Right. I recently saw on Instagram a video of, I'm not sure where in China it was, but of the firefighting drones,
Right.
which is unbelievable. I mean, and you guys have plans for that capability as well. That's an unbelievable thing.
Right, and it's working already. I mean, everybody
Yeah.
can see it on YouTube. We are closely cooperating here with a lot of domestic firefighting entities. We see huge interest into this product
Yeah.
because that's a real problem. I mean, cities start growing up into the air, buildings get higher and higher, but you have a huge issue if a fire is breaking out, and you need solutions
Right.
for that. And we think that our drone technologies can be very helpful here.
That's awesome. So, and now just a question. I know, speaking of cities and space, we saw that EHang recently launched its automated smart eVTOL vertiport, right, for the EH216S in Shenzhen and has plans to build what, 100 takeoff and landing sites by
Right.
2026, I think. Can
Right.
you speak to that and kind of how easy are these to build? How will the infrastructure plan play out?
Right. Right. Well, we see that Shenzhen is very ambitious here, and this is why it's a fantastic partner for us. And as I mentioned before, the implementation within big cities is, of course, logically much more challenging than in not so densely populated environments. So the whole question of infrastructure is pretty important for us, and we see this discussion in the community since many years. We see huge interest from real estate companies because our products basically give you the opportunity to be integrated very easily into public transport networks. I mean,
Right,
think about when you own a building and then a subway station is built near this building, it increases the value of your property massively. And
right,
our solutions give you the opportunity to be attached without massive investments of subway stations or building tunnels or building rails there
right,
for trams. So you just need to integrate a vertiport. However, the space available is a very high value. So, what is the best system to maintain, on the one hand, a very high volume of traffic of eVTOLs flying back and forth and transporting as many people as possible, while at the same time being able to store a lot of vehicles, to tackle a lot of issues like environment, flight conditions, safety, security, charging. So there are dozens of questions which need to be answered. And here a lot of different concepts are explored and tested globally. And we think that our showcase, our solution, which is in development together with Shenzhen, could be a very fitting one, while at the same time being not too costly, because that's what it's all about. I mean, I remember in the last years we saw hundreds of different studies and fancy CGI created inner city airports. The question is, how realistic are all of these concepts and proposals? And this is where it gets interesting. And we think that we are close and on the road to explore a system which could work and which could function and which is at the same time cost efficient.
So that said, what is the price to buy an EH216S? And do you have any idea on what would it cost to build one of these smart vertiports, if you don't mind me asking?
No problem at all. Well,
Yeah.
the product price is public anyway. It's a bit more than 400,000 US dollars.
Okay.
As of today, we will see how these prices develop in the future when we scale up the production.
Right.
So the cost per unit will get down, but that's going to take some time.
Yeah.
And looking at the infrastructure, I cannot disclose the costs of the Shenzhen vertiport system, but what I would like to mention is, and this is too little discussed in the Western Hemisphere, is the public investment which is going into the eVTOL infrastructure. Because let's face it and look at railway systems, for example. I'm not aware of any profitable railway system globally. So we have a lot of public money going into that sector because its public infrastructure is necessary for the economy. It's improving life of people. It's tackling environmental issues we're having and making transport greener in general. So there is a lot of arguments which justify public money going into that sector. And looking, for
Right.
example, at the environment in Europe, it's very much different to the Americas region or the Asia Pacific region. In Europe, you don't have too many mega cities, for example, and all of them have a very well-developed public transport system. But you have thousands and 10,000s of smaller villages where you have, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 people living. All
Yep.
of them maintain a train station. And then every hour you have a train with 5 wagons inside where you transport maybe 3, 4, 5 people. And this costs a fortune of money, which is public money at the end of the day.
It-
So imagine.
I don't even think about it like that, but you cannot, you're hitting the nail right.
Right, right. And
It's
think
crazy,
about
yeah.
taking a little portion
What
of
could
this
be done?
money, saving a lot of taxpayers' money at the same time, because our solutions don't need a lot of infrastructure investments. You don't need to build bridges. You don't need to dig tunnels. You don't need to maintain a huge train station. You, in theory, can fly and land basically everywhere, even if it's just a parking lot, you know?
Yep.
And at the same time, you improve the service for the local population, for the taxpayer massively. And imagine what this is going to change if you think in this dimension. So we have the public spending for the infrastructure, and a lot of that is happening in China as well. You have the privately owned operations, which are decentralized. So that's a very nice form of public-private partnership also, which
Right.
raises a lot of potential moving forward. And you make distance very relative, because if you're not deciding as a passenger, as a consumer, as a citizen any longer, where you want to live based on the time you need to commute, and the 2 hour drive becomes a 30-minute flight, for example, or a 20-minute flight. That's a game changer for whole
Totally.
regions, and we are
Everything. Correct.
very curious to see how that is turning out, you know?
Yep. Yeah, it's great. So, and on that note, I'm wondering, I can't wait to be able to take one of these vehicles to dinner on Long Island if it's not coming to New York City anytime soon. Can you talk just something, right? We talked about this 4 years ago. Can you talk
Right.
about plans for the United States?
Yeah.
Great.
Well, the United States are, of course, of very high priority for us, and we have a strong affiliation with the United States. I mean, we are listed there. As you know, we are
Right.
listed on the Nasdaq since our IPO in December 2019.
Yep.
We already undertook a lot of activities in the US already, and we have been flying our EH216 already several years ago. At the same time, we know that for political reasons, I do not want to comment too much on. It's not too easy for a China-based company in the US. Let's see how this is turning out moving forward. We also have the regulatory situation, meaning we are certified in our domestic market now.
Right.
And in the US, we would need to validate with the FAA. We are going to do that. The question is when. From our priorities, we're right now focusing on creating revenues, of increasing our profitability in the area where we already have a lot of necessary tools for that, especially in
Yep.
the certification area, and this is the Chinese market. At the same time, we can see a lot of United Nations members, states globally, who do not need an FAA or EASA certification, but they are totally willing to validate a CAC certification. Of course, there lies our strategic priority, because certifying from new or validate in the Western Hemisphere is, of course, much more investment intensive than validating a CAC certification in a country which is willing to do that. So we are screening these markets right now. We are developing business there. And once profitability increased, and we will be willing to invest into the certifications in the FAA and the other regions. So that's going to come. If you ask me when exactly, I don't know yet, but we are closely looking also what is going on within the US market right now. I mean, you have great companies being active there in the eVTOL sector. You see very close affiliations also with the defense sector, which is interesting to see. We're purely commercial. We are not in the defense industry. Our products are built not to defend, but our products are built to improve the life of people, and this is our focus, and this is where we stay.
Yep. Got it. Very cool. And so, and on that note, where are the EHang, the 216S is built? And, could we talk a little bit about the
Right.
production capabilities of
Yes.
of those facilities? Cool.
Yes. Well, we have a lot of plans to increase that, but where are we today? Today, our main factory is in Yunfu. It's a city about one and a half hour drive from our headquarters in Guangzhou. So it's also in southeastern China in the Guangdong province. And you can see it online. We have all the pictures public. We even have videos from factory tours. And today we have a capacity of 600 EH216 annually. And we are heavily working on increasing that and expanding our production capabilities. At the end of the day, the production will follow the market, So right now, we try to increase our manufacturing capabilities in our domestic market in China. And once we see that, for example, in Latin America or the US or Europe or somewhere else or the Middle East, demand is rising and increasing, we are totally open also to expand our production capabilities to other regions.
Awesome.
That's your business case calculation at the end of the day.
Right. Just awesome. What else? And what else is coming in the future? What haven't I asked that we should talk about?
Well, I think you mentioned a lot of important topics. At the end of the day, we should be aware of one thing. Besides all the potential of eVTOLs, all the visionary aspects and approaches, as well as the whole value chain of infrastructure and so on and operating models. At the end of the day, it's all about the price per ticket.
Yeah.
And we need to be aware that eVTOLs are not innovative in a way how we transport people or goods from A to B. We have this since decades, and it's called helicopter. So the innovation is to make the functional principle of a helicopter affordable to a much wider public,
Yeah.
but also tackling other issues like noise pollution and also CO2 emissions by using the electrical engines at the same time. But at the end of the day, it's all about what does a flight cost for the passenger. And here we need to look at different concepts out there in the market. And that's also something what gets me to the aspect of autonomy, why we are all in on autonomy from day one, while most of our competitors, even though I don't like this term at this stage of the market, there isn't a competition. We need to build the cake together right now at this stage. However, everybody wants to go into autonomy moving forward, but only two companies do at this stage. One is US based and one is us. And why are we doing that? Of course, because we truly believe that taking out the human factor and having autonomous vehicles flying is increasing safety and not reducing it. But it's also all about the costs. I mean, look at how many pilots are needed for commercial aviation, and we don't find them. So how you want to find and train pilots for 10,000s of eVTOLs flying around in the future? That's not going to work. And at the same time, that's a very costly human factor, which doesn't really provide added value. Besides the subjective feeling of safety, which is not the case. I mean, look at commercial aircraft. Everybody from us was flying autonomously already when you have category 3 landings and things like that. But you just have the feeling as a passenger in the cabin that somebody is in control in the cockpit, even though the pilot is maybe not even allowed to take control because of the conditions.
Right.
So that's a lot of things which are not too rational, but emotionally understanding, of course. We try to tackle these psychological, but also operational element. It's not purely psychological, by thinking in clusters, meaning you have an operational cluster. Doesn't matter if it's a countryside region or if it's an urban environment. Just imagine a network of a certain amount of EH216 operating. And for this network, we have a command and control system behind that. Think about it like a tower at an airport.
Right.
So you have people there who are in control. So you don't need these people in the tower, in the command and control system, to operate a whole network, but they can interfere in case it's necessary. So it's not just about operational aspects or technical failure, which might happen in theory. It's also about things like you have a heart attack, you have a medical issue, you want to talk to a person,
And it's
and
that,
then you
yeah.
have somebody who can interfere and bring you safely down to the ground.
So just
And
so I
directly,
understand, so let's say, so I have an EH216S. I
yeah.
purchased this. How is it flown? So do I press a button and there's someone in a control tower who is kind of watching that flight? Is there a control system on the ground just so that anyone who's watching
As
can
you
understand?
the first thing you mentioned, so you sit inside, you press a button, you pick a station where you want to fly, starting a landing spot, which I mentioned before is predefined at this stage of operations,
Okay,
and then you have the guys in this command and control center monitoring that. So you don't
got
need
it.
them to operate, but they can interfere in case it's necessary.
In case it's okay.
And going back to the cost element, this is the approach we try to incorporate into each step of the value chain. That's also the reason why our vehicle is very small, why we use a multi-copter system, why we don't have a pilot. Our vehicle has everything what it needs, but nothing else, because it's not for hours of commuting. It's meant for short hops, which
Right.
quickly bring you to the desired destination. And this is why we believe we are one of the very few which is really credible when we say we can achieve a ticket pricing which is affordable for the average consumer.
Right. And just remind us, how many passengers can the 216S accommodate?
Two.
Two. Good.
Because
Awesome.
it's always the balance of what's the demand.
Sure.
And if you look at cabs, for example, which is from the use case quite similar to compare, how often do you have more than two people in a cab? I mean,
Right.
it happens, but
Correct.
it's very rare. It's mostly
Yep.
one, sometimes two, but three and four is very rare. At the same time, if you have four people, you can take two EH216, so you can also commute with a short delay one after each other and still save a lot of time.
Right.
And this demand needs to be in balance with energy efficiency, size of the vehicle, operational circumstances, infrastructure, and we think that the two-seater is the sweet spot here. That's why we are positioned in that direction.
Right. Awesome. Andreas, this was awesome. It was so good catching up with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much on my side as well. And I hope we see you very soon in person again.
Me too. All right. Well,
Best wishes,
hopefully maybe in
best wishes
Geneva
today.
or I'll come visit if you'll invite me to the factory.
You're always most
I'd
welcome
love that.
to visit us in one of our destinations. And well, thanks for hosting us. It was great to be again on the podcast. And best wishes to the whole community out there, to all of your listeners and viewers, and especially to the United States. Was great being with you.
Thank you so much, Andreas.